From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The Venezuelan foreign minister has held a news conference at the United Nations in New York. He asked the UN to work towards ending the United States-led economic and financial blockade against Venezuela. The foreign minister also criticized the U.S. for openly leading a coup d'etat in Venezuela and pointed to other examples of U.S. imperialism in recent years.
We have requested the United Nations of the world to promote the end blocking of Venezuela, to withdraw all sanctions, to be able to access our $30 billion, our assets abroad, our gold that was also taken away by the Bank of England. We are asking for what belongs to the people. Nothing more, nothing less. And those resources will be used to produce what we need in Venezuela. We have mentioned, and President Maduro has denounced this openly, that the process of the coup d'etat in Venezuela, first time in history of Latin America, a coup d'etat has been led, that has been openly led by the government of the United States and its spokespeople. It's not like in the past, where they were there, they were sponsoring and financing such coup, they were moving all the pieces.
Our correspondent in New York, Karina Cartagena, has been following the visit of the Venezuelan foreign minister.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Saludos.
We are here in New York, where the Venezuelan foreign minister has come to explain the situation in the country. Jorge Ariasa met on Monday with the Secretary General of the United Nations to strengthen cooperation in areas like health and education and meet the needs of the Venezuelan people. In a communique, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres again offered to help promote a serious dialogue in Venezuela that could benefit the people and reduce tensions in the country. Ariasa today met with the non-aligned movement, which includes more than 120 countries. Many of them at the meeting argued that Venezuela needs the principles of their movement to be put into practice and lamented that a lack of unity within the non-aligned movement had made it easier for the United States to attack countries like Syria. They insisted that Washington should stop interfering in Venezuela, including its attempts to take a resolution on Venezuela to the UN Security Council. Various members insisted that Venezuela is not a threat to international peace. At a news conference later, Jorge Ariasa emphasized that President Maduro is open to a dialogue with the opposition without conditions where and when they wish. He said the UN Secretary General is ready to support such talks without any sort of political bias. When asked about the United States' attempts to get humanitarian aid into Venezuela, Ariasa said he hadn't talked to Guterres about this and that what Venezuela is asking for is that the US lifts its blockade and sanctions on the country and return to the Venezuelan people the more than $30 billion that these have cost, as well as Venezuela's oil subsidiary in the United States, Citgo. On the resolution which the United States wants to present to the Security Council in the coming days, Ariasa regretted that the US continues to insist on intervening and attacking Venezuela and called for it to respect the UN Charter in order to ensure peace and calm for the Venezuelan people. The foreign minister has been holding further bilateral meetings with other countries before ending his visit to New York.
Young Chavistas have marked National Youth Day in Venezuela with a march in Caracas in defense of democracy. Beginning at Plaza Morelos, the event marked 205 years since the Battle of La Victoria in the Venezuelan War of Independence. Each February 12th is celebrated as Youth Day in honor of the young students who fought in the battle. For more on this, we head to Caracas, where our correspondent Luis Tavera was present at the march.
This is the emblematic plaza, which today is filled with patriotic and Chavista youth. And what stands out today is that things like free education, inclusion in public health, and student scholarships are achievements only made possible under the revolution. Compared with other countries, they say that Venezuela will not allow anything to happen to their natural resources, nor these social missions, which have enfranchised young people. They say that this was made possible only with the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez. This march will depart from the Bellas Artes in the center of the capital and will march to the emblematic Plaza Bolivar, where these youth and other working-class citizens will be greeted by President Nicolas Maduro. Today, all are united around one slogan: no to imperialism, no to intervention, and yes to peace.
First of all, we are the cradle of American freedom. We are the sons and daughters of Bolivar. We're here like the new and old pines that Jose Marti spoke of. We're here on a patriotic and revolutionary offensive. We've been a land in resistance for 526 years. We're not going to change. They want our gold, our oil. That's why they're offering humanitarian aid. But we know that today, capitalism is in crisis. We know that they need our energy. We know that they need our resources. We know that they need the business of war. But here in Venezuela, they're going to fail. Here, in the land of Bolivar, they're not going to succeed. We won't allow it.
5 years have passed since FARC groups in Venezuela staged numerous violent protests causing widespread damage. Let's see what these guarimbas caused back in 2014.
Between February and June of 2014, 43 people died due to opposition-led violence in the streets. 33 were civilians, whilst 10 formed part of various Bolivarian security forces. 857 injured were reported during this same period, 600 civilian and 278 members of the security forces. There were 3,351 people arrested, out of which 436 were freed, 1,402 were prosecuted, and, up until 2015, only 41 remained in prison, according to the prosecutor's office. Opposition-led vandalism ended up causing $10 billion in damages to public property. Around 50 public transportation units were damaged, as well as health centres, public institutions and schools. There were also attacks against the country's electricity grid, amounting to $35 billion in damages to the system.
In Colombia, a number of political sectors and social organizations are demanding that President Iván Duque refrain from involvement in any type of military intervention in Venezuela. According to a 16-page letter addressed to Duque, a meeting is set for February 13 between the Colombian president and U.S. President Donald Trump. The rejection includes the use of Colombian territory by the U.S. military for war operations on the neighboring country. And the Colombian president has visited the area surrounding the Ituango Dam, a controversial hydroelectric project that has caused many environmental issues that have affected nearby communities. Our correspondent in Colombia, Tatiana Portela, gives us more details.
On Monday, Colombian President Iván Duque took an aerial survey of the Ituango Dam and visited some of the nearby communities. Duque said he is committed with the affected communities who are asking for the complete dismantling of the dam. This is in contradiction to what he said to the company behind the hydroelectric project. Duque told them that there is no humanitarian crisis in the area and he fully supports the construction of the Ituango Dam. Since the construction of the dam started, people who opposed to it have been persecuted, threatened, and some social leaders have even been killed. The Attorney General has opened an investigation into executives from the company's EPM Medellin, as well as governors and the former presidential candidate Sergio Fajardo. Fajardo was governor of the department of Antioquia, where the Ituango Dam is located. Although the National Authority for Environmental Licenses rejected the project and released a report to stop its construction, the Ituango Dam continues to be built. So the investigations are looking to clarify whether authorities who ordered the construction of the dam omitted information that said it should not have been built.
We thank Tatiana for that report. Scientists are scouring through the remains of Brazil's National Museum, which was destroyed by a fire last September. Their goal is to recover ancient artifacts and to hopefully hold some exhibitions with the remains. The museum, located in Rio de Janeiro, was destroyed by a fire last year. Around 20 million historical artifacts were burned to ashes. Its destruction led to national criticism over the lack of public funds to protect the country's heritage.
Here you can see a series of cabinets that store scientific pieces, scientific samples. A part of this material was destroyed, but as you can see there are drawers that have been dated and we are finding important scientific pieces that can be recovered for our collections.
Thousands of cuttlefish have washed up on shore in northern Chile. Environmental authorities are still investigating the cause, but warn people not to eat the fish. Locals fear Locals fear the incident is due to pollution and could damage the region's fishing industry. In 2018, various sea creatures, including whales, squid, and salmon, washed up at various beaches across the country. Scientists mostly blame the weather phenomenon El Niño that brings warmer seas. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Jamaica has begun the legislative process towards acquiring Venezuela's 49% shares in Petrojam. Those shares are held by Venezuela's state-owned oil and gas company, Petróleos de Venezuela Caribe.
This afternoon, Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, will table a bill to compulsorily acquire 49% shareholding in Petrojam Limited, which was sold to PDB Caribe by PCJ in 2007. It will not be debated today, but as you know, bills must be passed in 2 houses, and this takes time.
The first of 15 consultations on a draft gender equality strategy for the Caribbean community has kicked off in Antigua. Priority areas include equality and social inclusion, freedom from violence, access to health services and education, good governance, and economic empowerment. Delegates will also give recommendations to advance gender equality. The IMF's Deputy Managing Director has met with Dominica's Prime Minister to discuss the country's economic growth and development. The IMF official also visited hurricane-affected areas on the island. In 2017, Dominica was devastated by Hurricane Maria, which caused billions of dollars in damage. Both parties also discussed how the IMF will partner with Caribbean countries to find ways to avoid the failure of correspondent banking relationships. A coup has been prevented in Chad after a joint operation by the military and the French Air Force repelled the rebels. According to authorities, French jets destroyed dozens of pickup trucks. The Chadian army confirmed it had captured more than 250 rebels from the Union of Forces of Resistance, a Libya-based rebel coalition.
There was an attack by a rebel group which came from the unstable region of southern Libya that wanted to take power in Yamena through military force. And President Idris Deby asked us in writing to intervene to stop this coup d'etat, which came from southern Libya. This is in total compliance with international law, and the Prime Minister informed the President of the Senate and the National Assembly. I will myself appear in front of the Foreign Affairs Commission tomorrow to talk about it, if asked.
The incoming African Union chair, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, has vowed to strengthen African economic development and create more jobs opportunities. After assuming the AU chairmanship during the 32nd ordinary session of the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa on Monday, al-Sisi vowed to strengthen the basis of sustainable development in order to provide more job opportunities.
In 2019, we will work together towards strengthening ties with international partners, international and regional organizations and economic groups, as well as financing initiations at international level in order to build the industrial capacity of our continent and modernize our economy.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has slammed the state power company following the latest round of power outages across the country. Johannesburg and other major cities were plunged into darkness for hours after the power company switched off power. The company said it was caused by a mechanical failure at 6 of its generating units.
We've got to address this because Eskom is a risk. We've got all our energy eggs in one basket. When the generator of energy in our country reports that there are 6 units, it means that all 6 eggs are broken, and possibly we just have maybe a dozen eggs, and it should not be like that. And that is why we are saying we now need to have a new business model for Eskom, where we're able to minimize the risk, minimize our risk as a nation, like other countries have done.
As a new government in the Democratic Republic of Congo takes office for the first time since presidential elections, farmers hope that their grievances can finally be resolved.
Elders from Baoba still remember what the whites and the government promised back in the 60s in exchange for their lands. They wanted to build the Inga hydroelectric dam. They were promised homes, a school and a hospital that would have improved their quality of life, as well as access to electricity and tractors. But these proved to be empty promises. To this day, they don't even have a light bulb.
People are suffering. First of all, we need them to deliver everything they promised. We gave up our lands because of what they promised, so they owe us. If they were good people, they would pay us back. Our ancestors are gone, but we are still suffering from their abuse.
Those who work for foreign construction companies didn't receive any benefits either, like Mwanda Mwaka, who tells us there's been no positive change in her village.
Finding food is hard, finding water and medicine as well. We have not seen any improvements in all these years.
When they came to build the second channel, they didn't even respect Congolese workers. They never had them sign a work contract.
They paid us 150,000 Congolese francs a month.
You benefit from my labor, but ignore I have a whole family to feed. We are not against anyone in particular. We just want our dignity back. Don't use me. Make me sign a contract.
They continue to demand that the government lives up to its responsibilities.
Time for a second break. More news in a minute. Welcome back. Supporters of Catalan independence have protested in Barcelona against the trial of 12 separatist leaders that started on Tuesday. The trial is over the independence referendum held on October 2017 in defiance of a court ban. The 12 defendants face charges of rebellion, sedition, and misuse of public funds, which they all deny. The Catalan issue has deeply divided society and led to one of the country's biggest political crises.
I feel sad, angry, and I could say something worse against the system of the Spanish state and the court that is set up to condemn people.
Thousands have rallied outside the White House in the U.S. to demand that the temporary protection status of hundreds of thousands of migrants not be revoked. Protesters later continued to march through Washington, D.C. They have also demanded that migrants' TPS status be made permanent. Hundreds of thousands of migrants live under the temporary protection status, which allow them to live and work in the U.S. for a period of time.
We need to make sure that we as a nation honor our promises. And that is what this is all about. We, from Nepal to Honduras, we have made a promise to say that the United States will be a safe haven. We will be that lantern on the shore.
Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Alina Duarte, gives us more details.
We are in front of the White House, where hundreds of people have gathered to demand that the U.S. government does not suspend temporary protection status that protects more than 300,000 migrants, mostly from El Salvador, Haiti, and Honduras. On Tuesday, people will march to several institutions, including Congress, to demand the government guarantees temporary protection status, which is at risk. They also demand that migrants who have been living here for more than 2 decades be given citizenship.
We thank Alina for that report. Mexican drug trafficker Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán has been found guilty and faces life imprisonment. A U.S. court found him guilty of all 10 charges related to drug trafficking. He was accused of manufacturing and distributing heroin and marijuana and ordering killings. He was arrested in 2016 after escaping a Mexican prison and was extradited to the United States for a trial in 2017. Turkey has made a series of arrests in its biggest crackdown on the Gulen movement. Here's more on that and a look at other stories from around the world.
Over 1,000 arrest warrants have been issued in Turkey for people with alleged links to US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen, who's accused of plotting the failed coup in 2016. Suspects were arrested in the city of Adana in one of the largest state crackdowns. Following the failed coup, 77,000 people were arrested and 130,000 lost their government jobs. Hundreds of farmers have protested against the olive crisis and falling prices of milk in front of Parliament in Rome. Since 2013, thousands of olive trees have been cut down in the southern region of Puglia to contain a bacterial outbreak. Demonstrators have called on the government to save trees and stop the controversial measures. They also decline in the price of sheep milk, which according to reports has dropped 25%.
Is it possible that we have to pay 70 cents to produce 1 liter of milk when the cheese industry keep paying us for the same milk 54 to 60 cents for the same milk, including taxes? This is absurd. It just cannot go on like this any longer. We want no more charity from the state. We want those who are really responsible for this situation, cheese companies and consortiums, to go home.
The UN envoy to Yemen has arrived in the capital Sana'a amid reports of humanitarian crisis. Food aid in a warehouse on the front lines of Yemen's war was reported to be at risk of rotting, leaving millions of Yemenis without access to life-saving sustenance. Humanitarian organizations are concerned about the lack of access to the area due to the war.
As Valentine's Day approaches, Ecuadorian rose farms are preparing to take the market by storm. This Valentine's Day, around 17,000 tons of roses were sold to Ecuador's regular customers, the US, Canada, and Russia. China is also a big buyer that mainly purchases rainbow roses. Ecuador is the third largest exporter in the world after Holland and Colombia.
The rose was considered to be deformed, but we've discovered unique characteristics. Sometimes they have the form of a heart or different shapes develop in the middle of the rose, so they've become very appealing.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.